From MTN News, you're watching Montana This Morning.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service makes a decision about protection for grizzly bears, what the agency's saying, why, and the reaction from state officials just ahead.
Plus, the man who has led Gallatin County through the coronavirus pandemic is leaving his job. Coming up, Matt Kelly explains where he is going and why he's moving on.
Well, it is 6:30 on this first day of April. Chet Lehman, Holly Bradley with you, Matt Elwell. As I'm looking out the window, I just walked outside. I think here in tropical Four Corners, it's like in the mid-30s, and it's beautiful outside.
Yeah, it is nice. Most areas holding into the 20s, but there are some warmer temperatures. Wind speeds are going to really pick up this afternoon, so I want to emphasize to folks,
good.
Well, it's not going to be the extreme that we had earlier.
You can make fun of me for my hair when those wind speeds pick up, Matt.
Well, yeah, extra hold hairspray, right? Warmer temperatures mean stronger winds through the afternoon. That could cause some fire danger, certainly off to our north, but we've got pretty dry conditions for the next few days. These temperatures warm up and the wind speeds pick up across the region. Looks like our daytime high should be near the mid-60s for Bozeman, a little cooler in Butte, but still pleasant overall. We're going to talk more about what your April Fool's Day has in store. Much more that's coming up in just a few minutes.
Thank you, Matt. Well, first here, after a disagreement, debate, and a 5-year review, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recommends that grizzly bears in the lower 48 states retain their threatened species status.
A news release, I should say, states progress has been made towards the bears' recovery. The bears are now considered biologically recovered. However, federal wildlife managers say considerable challenges remain. Those include limited habitat, connectivity, human-caused mortality, and uncertainty around future conservation efforts in some ecosystems. Montana Governor Greg Gianforte spoke out against that decision.
I would have liked to have seen a different decision. These grizzly bears, we've seen predation increase on an annual basis, and it's unfortunate. Montana is perfectly able to manage this population if we had the control to do it. Until the delisting occurs, that's not possible.
Thank you. Now, Montana Republican Senator Steve Daines and Congressman Matt Rosendale also released statements disagreeing with that decision.
Meantime, marijuana business owners are laying out concerns they have with a proposed bill that would reshape Montana's marijuana laws before legal recreational sales even begin.
But many say they're willing to reconsider if there are changes. House Bill 701, sponsored by Republican Representative Mike Hopkins of Missoula, is one of the major marijuana reform bills under consideration right now. That bill would require local governments to opt in to allow recreational marijuana businesses before one could open.
It would also redirect tax revenue to the Heart Fund, Governor Greg Gianforte's proposed account for substance abuse and mental health treatment. Many of those testifying say some of the bill's provisions would harm small marijuana businesses, and they are opposed to the opt-in requirement.
We carried this industry and founded it and helped develop the regulations and worked with the inspectors to develop these standards. Don't just invalidate all our hard work and throw us locals to the side and let big money come in.
Whereas initiative folks are out there to pass an initiative, the 150 people here in this building are here to represent the entirety of the state of Montana. And that includes folks that are in favor, not in favor, voted for it, didn't vote for it.
The committee held hearings on 2 other marijuana reform bills yesterday. It is expected to take action on those bills next week.
Back here at home now, the man who has led the Gallatin City County Health Department through the COVID-19 pandemic, taking a new job.
Health Officer Matt Kelly says he will be the first Chief Executive Officer of the Montana Public Health Institute. His new role will have him working with public health officials all across the state. Kelly will stay on until sometime in June and help in the search for who will replace him.
Now, Chair of the Gallatin City County Board of Health, Becky Franks, said the board will start the search for Kelly's replacement immediately. Kelly said in a release, in his own words, "As challenging and trying as the pandemic has been, I love being health officer in Gallatin County, and leaving will be very difficult." He said the new job will have him working to improve the health and quality of all Montanans and serve the state he loves.
More about Kelly here. He has been the health officer in Gallatin County for 11 years now. You might not know he holds a journalism degree from Drake University and a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He was a reporter on Capitol Hill and served in the Peace Corps in West Africa. Meantime, the Montana Public Health Institute that Kelly will lead became a nonprofit in April of 2020. It took 2 years to put it together after studies and analysis. The institute will partner with health agencies for state, local, tribal, and rural public health. It will look at policy and where money should go. You can find a link to MTPHI initiatives on our website.
Another headlines this morning at 6:34. This week, Montana's U.S. Senator Steve Daines touring eastern Montana.
He's keeping his fight alive for what he says are high-paying jobs that the Keystone XL pipeline would bring. But first, he sat down with MTN's Andrea Lutz.
You know, those are, I'll call them East Coast liberal elites that have not spent time with law enforcement like I have.
Senator Steve Daines is not mincing words, talking explicitly about why drug trafficking from the southern border is Montana's problem.
They'll tell you it's Mexican meth, it's Mexican fentanyl, it's Mexican heroin that's coming across the southern border right into our state.
Daines took questions in his first sit-down interview in months about several issues, making it clear recent comments concerning Montana's homegrown meth labs he made while touring the southern border were misrepresented.
I was just speaking with one of our sheriffs just yesterday, and he said, "Steve, what you said was the truth." In the days of the meth labs, 20 years ago, you talk to our drug enforcement professionals, they'll tell you the purity rates are around like 30%. The problem we have is the purity rates now are over 90% with the Mexican meth. It's far more dangerous, far more addictive.
Daines just returned from Texas and touring the border, where he calls the situation there tragic. But now he's off on another trip, this time to eastern Montana, fighting to keep the Keystone pipeline relevant.
Really the devastating impact of the cancellation of the Keystone Pipeline. I mean, this is a project that provides $80 million a year, every year, of tax revenue.
The 1,700-mile pipeline would span 6 states, including Montana, carrying oil from Canada to the Gulf Coast and bringing much environmental opposition.
What it does here in terms of a sound infrastructure project that we need that's entirely funded by the private sector. There's counties that need some help right now across our state. It's those eastern Montana counties.
And as President Biden unveils a $2 trillion infrastructure plan set to raise the business tax, Daines says he's ready to fight that too.
When they cut taxes, you put more money back into the economy, allow businesses to decide where they want to invest, and guess what? They create more jobs, wages goes up, we win. I'm very concerned about this idea that the president now wants to increase taxes.
However, Biden's transportation secretary says Americans making less than $400,000 a year won't see an increase. Still, Daines cautions the plan, saying it will incentivize jobs to move overseas. In Billings, Andrea Lutz, MTN News.
Now, as we reported when it happened, Daines co-sponsored a letter with 4 other senators asking Biden to support the Keystone Pipeline.
Well, on the national scene now, President Biden's new infrastructure proposal is meant to fix roads and bridges in the hopes it also gives the economy a boost by providing millions of jobs.
But will this actually become law, or will it be difficult for President Biden? And how will this all impact you? Our Joe St. George gets some answers.
President Biden wanted stimulus checks.
$2,000 stimulus check.
And by mid-March, he signed into law more stimulus checks. Well, in Pittsburgh, the president announcing his next big goal, infrastructure reform. His plan comes at a cost of $2 trillion. 20,000 miles of roads and 10,000 plus bridges will be impacted. Airports, Veterans Affairs hospitals, child care facilities, and water lines, including lead piping in schools, are set for updates too. Biden's plan calls to pay for this by increasing the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%. There's no plan for an individual income tax hike so far, but if your company faces a higher tax rate, that could impact your prospect for a raise.
Passing stimulus checks to some degree was easy for President Biden. Every Democratic senator supported the idea. Infrastructure, though, is more nuanced. And while everyone here on Capitol Hill likes the idea of improved bridges across the country, the idea of new taxes or more debt is concerning not only to Republicans, but to moderate Democrats as well.
President Biden doesn't have much room for error when it comes to making this infrastructure proposal law. Assuming no Republicans support it in the House right now, the president can only afford to lose 3 Democrats and still pass it. In the Senate, he can't afford to lose a single Democrat. In recent history, tax increases have been difficult to get through. The last time Congress raised taxes significantly was in 1993, although this proposed corporate tax rate would still be lower than what it was in 2016 before President Trump and Republicans lowered it. All this means infrastructure reform won't be easy. Negotiations with Congress are expected to last most of the summer, with votes not taking place until July at the earliest. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
Obviously, much more to follow on that.
Right, a lot going on there.
And then the second part of his plan will be unveiled in a couple of weeks, as I understand it. So.
Well, we'll be watching.
Yep.
Meantime, here's a question for you. Do you have an idea for a better face mask? It could win you thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars in a new contest. Coming up, find out how that works.
But first, here's Gail King with a look at what's coming up on CBS this morning at 7 o'clock.
Good morning to you. Ahead on CBS this morning, breaking overnight, another mass shooting. A gunman opened fire in a Southern California office complex, killing at least 4 people. We'll have the latest on that investigation. Plus, in her first TV interview since starting her new role, the female Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks, she's the first one, tells us how she's breaking barriers and trying to bring change to the Pentagon. And it's opening day for Major League Baseball. We'll look at how teams are preparing ballparks for spectators, plus what they plan to do with the millions of giveaways that should have gone to the fans last year. In the meantime, they say play ball. We'll see you at 7 o'clock on the dot.